Afternoon Karak with Aisha Al-Mazmi and Mikhail Atiyah.
On Pulse 95.
What's considered a red flag to you?
In a person.
Obviously, in a dog or a cat. Obviously,
Okay.
in a person.
In a person, wow. A person who does not keep their word. This is a big problem with me. Especially if they said, Mikey, I promise, you got it, you have my word, and they don't do it. That is a huge red flag.
I've said this before.
I start building walls after that.
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. It's people who don't like watermelon.
Okay. I like how I have a serious answer.
I am serious.
Okay,
Why do you think I'm
serious.
not serious about people who like watermelon? There's just something, I cannot trust them unless they can give me a good idea as to why they don't like watermelon.
And they just give you like these like empty excuses.
Yeah, it's like, why don't you like watermelon? It's watermelon.
I see. Oh my God.
For me, there's also other stuff. For example, like also people who don't like mangoes.
Sorry, I don't like it. I tried eating mangoes. It's not my kind of fruit. It's too sweet and it's slimy and
How is
it
it
gets
slimy?
sticky in my hands. And for me, I'll be honest, it's just I don't enjoy it as
You
much.
can literally go to the co-op and get the already cut up mango pieces and you're good to go. You don't need to touch them anymore.
I'm sorry, but even then, it's just mango itself. I do not really like.
Well, here's the thing. If you are the type of person who does not like this fruit, then you should let that man go.
Oh my God. Oh my God. On a Monday.
On a Monday, puns on a Monday, and so much more right here on the Afternoon Karak. We've got a fun-filled hour as usual. We also have a big discussion. I cannot wait to talk about this one because I came across it as usual on Twitter. It involves the comic community. Maybe it is very reminiscent of the comic community in the West, but nonetheless, it is a very important topic. As we see more people getting interested in this medium, the question is, what constitutes as a real comic? And is there such a thing as a real comic? That's a big discussion. I can't wait to get into it.
Also, we're celebrating sort of like something that we've always been fighting against. One of our one of those vices.
Every single day, and the reason why I was late today to work.
It's a force of habit. But also, we're going to be talking about Horizon Zero Dawn. Apparently, Sony is getting a lot of backlash from the community because the next gen upgrade for this game is actually they put a little bit of a paywall, but ever since that happened, they kind of like did a bit of a U-turn. Also, we're talking about Nintendo. Reportedly, they are going to be bringing back some Game Boy Color games as well, sort of like preserving legacy games. I really like that. There's also Take-Two Interactive. They're cracking down on more of these fan projects that are remastering their Grand Theft Auto games, specifically GTA 3 and Vice City, which already feels like it's implying a lot from their end that they want to make sure that nobody is making any copies or fan projects of those games because of a rumor we talked about a while back.
Yes, we're also going to be talking about Guillermo del Toro, who's bringing a star-studded cast to his anthology horror series to Netflix that we spoke about a good while back. Text us 4215 Salat or do. Stay tuned to all of this and so much more. Stay locked to Pulse 95.
What's the date?
What's the date?
What's the date?
What are we celebrating today?
Everybody has their own struggle, but I can say for sure that a good chunk of us are struggling with fighting against procrastination. So happy Fight Procrastination Day. If there is a day you should be fighting procrastination, it just happens to be today.
I will say this. Weird timing because tomorrow I'm going to be taking my annual leave and just taking a little vacation, which is, I'm going to be doing the complete opposite of this celebration. But I think what's important here and to create some awareness is everyday tasks, everyday errands that you can do today, do them instead of leaving it for tomorrow.
Here's the thing. What a lot of people don't realize is that because it's eventually becomes such a subconscious thing, is that we forget that sometimes or a lot of times we we procrastinate because we don't want something to happen. So you should always sit down with yourself and say, why am I procrastination? Why am I avoiding something so much? For example, there is something called revenge sleep, revenge procrastination sleep, if I'm saying the term correctly, which is when people procrastinate sleep because for the entirety of the day, they've been doing tasks, maybe most likely something revolving around school/university or work. So they had no power over their entire day. So they push back their sleep as a way to gain control over their life because that is the only free time they have. And in the essence of it, they end up basically jeopardizing their sleeping pattern and their awakeness and their attentiveness. And eventually that obviously can cause lots of issues and problems. So there are so many layers as to why people procrastinate. It is not that people procrastinate just because they're being lazy. That is such a terrible stereotype. But every single one of you should be reassessing themselves and trying to tackle the root of the problem as to why you are procrastinating. There's always a reason why. So it's not just, oh, I'm feeling lazy or that person doesn't care. There's usually something that is happening or will be happening that you probably are avoiding.
Actually, I never thought of it that way until you brought it up. You're right, because you didn't do anything that was probably enjoyable that day. So you're like, you know what, I'm going to stretch it out. I want to spend these next hours doing what I love, you know, watch a few YouTube videos, get on the PlayStation, and then it's 4 o'clock in the morning.
It looks like oopsies. And there are times also when you procrastinate some things that you enjoy as well. And if that's the case, you really need to reassess what is wrong or what is happening. Perhaps there are even, something a lot more darker, something a lot more problematic, something you need to basically tackle and perhaps see a professional about. Because I know that a lot of people who have, procrastination as sort of like a cycle that keeps on happening. And if that keeps on happening, again, needs a lot of reassessment. So take care of yourselves as usual and be good to yourselves.
Break the cycle of procrastination.
Absolutely. Do whatever it takes to do that. And it's not easy. It's very difficult. So I understand what you're going through. So does Mikhail. I do it every single day. But sometimes you just need to kick yourself and get on moving with the things that you should be doing and also with the things that are good for you, including watching things and playing things and doing your errands and all that at the proper timings. Now, what is a proper timing? It goes back to you. Some of you guys might be night owls. That is okay. As long as you're getting your 7 to 8 hours of sleep, cleaning your room, cleaning yourself, etc., everything is set to go. It is all up to you. But again, take care of yourselves.
Yes, slapping you guys with that reality check and slapping you lovingly and dearly. Coming up next, we're talking about Horizon Forbidden West. This is the new sequel from a PlayStation's exclusive. It's having issues with its next-gen upgrade, and it's got a lot of backlash from the community. So Sony had to do a little bit of a U-turn. Let's talk about that and so much more right here on the Afternoon Cutout.
Make a hot cuppa and relax. It's Afternoon Karak with Aisha Al-Mazmi and Mikhail Atiyah.
On Pulse 95.
As gamers are slowly transitioning from last-gen consoles to the current-gen consoles, Microsoft has sort of cemented themselves as the platform for that accessibility feature where people can just buy a game from the Xbox One and have that next-gen upgrade for free. However, Sony seems to be struggling a bit because it seems with every game there comes a big issue. And Horizon Zero Dawn Forbidden West, we got a bit of a gameplay trailer a while back, and the pre-orders came up last weekend. However, people noticed that you had to pay a little extra to get the next-gen upgrade when it was supposed to be for free.
It is a very strange decision from Sony because, when it came to pretty much every single game that is supposedly going to be released, and whether it was already released or going to be released simultaneously on the PS4 and the PS5, every single one of them promised a free next-gen upgrade. So it was very strange that they would go towards this direction, especially for a long-awaited game. It made no sense, but at least they quickly U-turned at 180 degrees and changed their minds very quickly and went back to the original promises of the upgrade being free.
Now that's some good news, but the thing is, we don't have to. We, as a community, we shouldn't be going out and pointing fingers and telling Sony what to do. This should be already established from the get-go that exclusives from their platform should have free next-gen upgrades.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is such a weird decision. Like, as I was saying, if you think about all the other games, I mean, the game that I would like to talk about right now is Final Fantasy VII Remake, which already was released on the PS4 last year. And then they promised that if you get the PS5 version, you can basically
play that DLC.
Play the new DLC. And you can just use whichever, you can literally transfer the entire game to your new console. And I like about it as well, there are also some rumors, I believe that have been confirmed as well, that 6 months later, that DLC will be available for people who have the PS4. So every single studio out there is trying to be as accessible as possible because they're fully aware that not everybody has the PS5 or will have the PS5 because unfortunately of what's been happening with them, the whole issue of producing parts, the pandemic, etc. And it's just, they're trying to be accessible, they're trying to be understanding. Then you have Sony, for some reason, going backwards, especially when we're talking about Sony versus Microsoft. And just like you said earlier in the segment, that basically Microsoft has cemented itself as being very user-friendly, and which is basically the race in this generation, because when it comes to how strong its console is, they're neck and neck. There isn't much of a difference. It all goes back to brand loyalty, and it goes back to how far will that company take care of basically its users and the people, their fans, and also how are they going to recruit new people. And I feel like Microsoft is winning within that arena simply because of the way they're being incredibly accessible. There's also that news of them probably having cloud gaming through an application on your TV. They're being incredibly accessible. But what is Sony doing?
Basically, Sony, don't push your luck. And if this happens again with another exclusive, then I guess maybe we have a really big problem in our hands.
Oh yeah,
but I hope that this is the little mistake that can be forever undone.
And don't you forget that the difference between the games that were available at launch for both new generation consoles, the difference was kind of like, it hurts. I mean, as a Sony fan, as Michaela, you as well, you are a massive Sony fan. I'm pretty sure you probably looked at the Microsoft library and kind of went like,
I'll be honest, I have a Game Pass. I have an Xbox Game Pass subscription.
There you go.
If that, and I was a loyal PlayStation fan for years, but this year, Microsoft really changed my mind.
They really are changing a lot of fans' minds, so they should take this as one of the many cautionary tales that they've been kind of going past that line where they should not be passing, because the fans have been very loyal and they've been kind of taking it into heart, and they've been trying their best, giving lots of chances to Sony. And I know even though you're probably still a Sony pony at heart, they're still pushing, very...
I'm slowly converting, yeah.
Exactly that. We're going to be taking a short break, and coming up next, we're going to be talking about Guillermo del Toro, one of my favorite and Mikhail's favorite directors, bringing a star-studded cast to his upcoming Netflix horror anthology series, coming up next right here on the Afternoon Karak.
Make a hot cuppa and relax. It's Afternoon Karak with Aisha Al-Mazmi and Mikhail Atiyah
on Pulse 95.
I don't think we can talk about Guillermo del Toro without asking Mikhail, how do you pronounce the name? Did you manage it? Are you going to do it?
Okay, here we
Let's go.
Guillermo del Toro.
Well, you did well. You did very well. Very proud of you.
Tap myself on the back.
So Guillermo del Toro is bringing a horror anthology series to Netflix, which we spoke about a good while back, and the title is appropriately called Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities.
I love this because if you ever watch any interviews, and there's a couple of interviews where they actually sit down with him at his own house, and his house is a museum of all sorts of props and collections from his past movie projects that he's done. It's an out of this world experience.
I mean, it only makes sense. He is a massive fan of horror and also just monsters in general. He is the creator of Pan's Labyrinth. Everybody who has watched that movie can know how crazy he can go, even though it might seem very innocent, but the themes and the stories are quite deep. And also, my favorite movie ever was directed by Guillermo del Toro,
Pacific Rim.
And it just tells you that that guy really has a passion for monstrosities.
Now, a Cabinet of Curiosities. This is actually being exclusively made for Netflix. He's gonna be the producer of this series. So this is a think of it as an anthology series, a collection of unprecedented and genre-defining stories meant to challenge our traditional notions of horror, with episodes that will be sophisticated and sinister and range from macabre to magical, gothic to grotesque or classically creepy.
I love that.
Sign me up.
Absolutely. Some of the cast include Andrew Lincoln from The Walking Dead. The one I'm mostly looking forward to is the one with none other than Ben Barnes. He is one of my favorites. And some of the stories will be inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. And what is interesting as well, that he also has the director of the Babadook. If you guys know the Babadook, it's a very also creepy kind of horror movie, and the director is gonna bring some stories from Del Toro to life as well. There are so many people: Luke Robert, Glenn Turman, Demetrius Gross, Sebastian Roche, so many out there who are gonna be part of it. And as far as I understand, I think we're gonna have around 8 episodes or so, I believe.
I think so, maybe 8 to 9. But this is really great news. I was already just still waiting for his Pinocchio adaptation, the stop motion.
Yeah.
I don't know when that's gonna come out. Maybe by next year. But with now a horror anthology series coming to Netflix, if I can't get Black Mirror, I'm gonna get Cabinet of Curiosities.
We're gonna need to wait until the 3rd of December, which isn't too far away. But goodness, when it comes to things that are good things from Guillermo del Toro, that is way too far away. But
another reason to be alive, just open up the list.
Open up the list.
There we go.
Yes, absolutely. Adding this, especially since we're seeing a whole new genre, or basically a revival of the horror series, the campiness of the horror series, because we're tired of those jump scares and we want the good old horror genre to come back in all its force. We're going to be taking a short break. We've got the sports headlines coming up. Then we're going to be talking about a rumor that Nintendo is reportedly set to bring some Game Boy and Game Boy Color games to the Switch. We're going to have a discussion about comics, and Take-Two suing reverse-engineered GTA 3 and Vice City fan project creators, coming up next right here on the Afternoon Karak.
Speculation, gossip, or hoax. Rumor has it.
According to rumors from a podcast called Nate the Hate, corroborated by Nintendo Live on last Tuesday, and again last Friday by Eurogamer, Nintendo may be finally bringing its well-known storied handheld gaming library to the Nintendo Switch, and that is both the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color games. And this is quite interesting. It is a rumor that I can believe, because it did bring some SNES games to the Nintendo Switch a good while back, part of their new sort of a subscription-based kind of game. And it was very welcomed back then. But I think the reason why they're doing it is because of emulators.
I think so. They probably find it very expensive to bring everybody into court and sue them for any type of rom-com or emulator out there. So you know what? Like Thanos in that one scene when he puts the Infinity Gauntlet, he's like, fine, I'll do it myself.
Especially since this is a recurring thing where we always hear that Nintendo's going after some emulator creator, some website that posts or uploads rom-coms, etc., etc., etc. It's nothing new. But I think it only took them this long to finally be like, fine, we're gonna do it and put it on our own, official system. Especially since that if they could easily, I wouldn't say easily, but if they managed to successfully emulate SNES and Nintendo 64 games onto the Switch, why did it take them this long to finally bring their Game Boy and Game Boy Color games also to the Switch?
I will never know, to be honest. This rumor could also imply that they might be developing a Game Boy Classic, something in the vein of those mini consoles that came out, the NES and the SNES, where they put like maybe 50 to 100 games in it, but one for the Game Boy specifically. But I think that's a bit far-fetched. I'm just putting it out there because it might happen, but it could be part, like the rumor says, this could be part of the Switch subscription, online subscription that people pay for. So, and that one already you get the classic NES and SNES collection, but not all of it. It's been a slow sort of curation. They've been slowly pumping in certain games, but fans have been demanding some better, like the more popular titles to finally jump into that library.
Exactly, especially since, a lot of those titles are games that probably haven't had a proper remake or reboot or even a sequel for such a long time, including Earthbound. I know people have been asking for an Earthbound remake. Even though this game was on the Game Boy Advance / Game Boy SP, but I've been waiting for a Golden Sun remake for such a long time, etc. There are so many fans out there who probably are very nostalgic for these games, and including perhaps some Pokemon games. There's so many games that were part of those consoles, so it only makes sense.
That's So Raven.
That's So Raven?
On the Game Boy Color. I remember.
Really?
I bought that copy from Sugil Merkazi. And I gotta say, like, if I can play it again, I'd pay.
Was it a
price.
Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advance?
I think it was Game Boy Color.
Thing is, honestly, whether it's Game Boy Color games or Game Boy games or Game Boy Advance games, they're all welcomed, and I believe it is a good way to basically maybe perhaps keep those fans quiet, keep them, entertained.
And preserve legacy games.
Exactly, so they wouldn't go to emulators. Meanwhile, they can work on some sequels for some of their big games. Coming up next, we're going to be having a discussion that erupted on Twitter as subsequently, I hate that word, but I like using it, so subsequently.
I can't even say it.
You know what? Eventually,
the case of the Mondays.
It is case of the Mondays, guys. It eventually, went all over, the internet and other platforms about what constitutes as a real or professional comic. Coming up next, right here on the Afternoon Karak.
Make a hot cuppa and relax. It's Afternoon Karak with Aisha Al-Mazmi and Mikhail Atiyah.
On Pulse 95.
So I came across this discussion on Twitter, and it made a lot of people angry, and I believe it probably will make anybody who is interested in any form of comics angry as well, because this article was claiming that internet-based applications, for example, like Tapas or Webtoon, whatever is on these platforms, are not really professional comics. I'll read you a small part of this article because they were referring to DC's recent deal with Webtoon to bring superhero content to the platform. And basically it says, but some saw it as just trading down the DC brand by mingling the material with a lot of substandard fan-created content that's prevalent on mobile subscription-based comics platforms.
That's demeaning an entire platform of creators and storytellers. To put them all, to label that all together is it's not a good thing. It's discriminatory.
It's very discriminatory and also very, very, like you said, very demeaning. Let me add to it so you can let me fuel that anger. That person basically says they're trying to kind of say that technically anybody who is a professional, like the professional amateur, the difference between them is usually somebody who gets paid for doing what they do.
Okay.
Which makes no sense because you could be an amateur in anything, like candle making. You can be an amateur writer. You can be an amateur, I don't know. mechanic, amateur engineer. But also at the end of it doesn't mean that you do not have the expertise. You're working towards eventually becoming somebody well known and somebody who is, can become an important part of whatever industry they are in. So already them basically putting the line between amateur and professional makes absolutely no sense. That's one part. But they say that still, there was until recently a pretty clear demarcation between work produced to the standards of Marvel and DC and the stuff you can find on a Tumblr page or a self-published material peddled at an artist alley table.
Okay, listen, DC, Marvel, these are powered by big corporations.
They are at least 70 years old.
Yes.
At least.
Yes, so you have to imagine the workmanship, the work ethic, their quality, of course, is great, but it's one that is refined with 70 years worth of experience.
And it's also the only reason it is refined is because for some reason, people decided that based on God knows what standards that they are going to be the standard for comics, when that is unfair, because there are so many big comic producers out there that a lot of people are not even aware of. They just don't know who they are, what they are, or what they do. Some of them are even, sub companies that belong to DC and Marvel, but people still don't know who they are. And what angers me the most is that Tapas and Webtoons are just simply platforms. They're not there to be like, oh, this is just amateur work. This is work that only some people who don't know anything who have,
Is that a bad thing? I mean, every artist out there has to start somewhere,
The thing is the way this person basically refers to these comics as, I'm saying amateur, but this is me being nice according to what he's saying, because what he calls them is substandard. He says that they're unprofessional, that the way the art is made is, the art style itself is not up to standards, and it is very stereotypical what he's saying, and also kind of racist, because if you go eastwards, maybe towards Africa, towards Asia, the Middle East, what is considered as the standard for each community is different. I mean, if you put anime versus Western animation or mangas versus Western comics,
it's a different ball game.
Very different. So to use DC and Marvel as the standard when it comes to comics is, again, stereotypical, demeaning, and also very much racist.
Well, I'm glad that the communities out there are speaking up and they're not keeping silence.
Oh yeah.
With this editor, this journalist who comes off as demeaning, discriminatory to these big creative platforms. Because being a common artist to begin with is hard. It's challenging. It's very competitive, and it's ever evolving. So who are you to just put everything in a standardized box, as you'd say?
Absolutely. And the irony of it is a lot of people were replying to this article and the whole conversation, etc. And some of them basically said that there are people, comic artists on Webtoon, who are getting a lot more money than artists on DC and Marvel. If you look at Lore Olympus, one of my favorite comics that I spoke about and recommended last year, which I easily binge read like this and caught up with. I had to stop myself. I'm now behind by like several months because of how good it is. I wanted to collect. It's getting a show deal. It's going to be adapted into a show. It has 9 million subscribers. Compare that to the latest Batman comic. Compare that to the latest Spider-Man comic. How many people have bought out those copies in comparison to the people who have subscribed, and the whole cult that was created behind these well-known comics. And also, Artist Alleys is a place where a lot of people can emerge. It's very unfair for him to go up and say that no, Artist Alleys are unprofessionals for amateurs. No, mean, it's very easily, if you go to Comic-Con here in the UAE and the various cons around the world, there you can easily notice some people's artwork and their style simply because you've seen them so many times that they're also fan favorites.
Different markets, different sides of the industry. All I can say is just be a little bit more open-minded and see different perspectives.
Absolutely.
Coming up next, just a quick story about Rockstar as they are cracking down on some big fan projects that are remastering some of their classic Grand Theft Auto games. Stay tuned.
It's almost 5 p.m.
That was Afternoon Karak. For dessert,
Aisha and Mikhail suggest
We had some big discussions today. You might have missed out on some, and that includes fighting procrastination, Horizon Forbidden West, Guillermo del Toro, and what constitutes as a professional, quote unquote, or real comic. But that is okay because we do have our podcast that goes up a little bit after the show ends. Just check us out wherever you listen to podcasts, and that includes Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, and Rami, etc. Just search us up on Google, Apple Podcasts, etc. Afternoon Karak, and you will find us there. Or check out our video. You will find us on YouTube because we do stream live throughout all our shows here on Pulse 95. Just search up Pulse 95 Radio, and the video will also be up there. Now, before we let go of Mikhail, who will be gone and leaving me running the desk solo for the next 2 weeks and a half, he has one suggestion for all of you.
Now, I know for the past 6 months you've been tuning into the show. I've been talking about, when I move into my apartment, and I still haven't moved into my apartment. But when I do, here's a suggestion for you guys. If you're looking to give your living space a new makeover, head on to Pinterest for some inspiration. I've heard about Pinterest for a long time, but then I started hearing this conversation of, I get a lot of my ideas from Pinterest. It's like, oh, okay, maybe I should do that. And I've never gone back, honestly.
Same here. I mean, I use Pinterest to look up some random fantasy dresses so I can imagine myself wearing them, but that's beyond the point. Pinterest is the place where you can make your storyboards, your mood boards, whatever board you'd like. If you're gonna move into a new place, or just like me, you just wanna pretend that you look pretty in a big fluffy dress, Pinterest has it all.
The platform for daydreaming. And if I give up and I don't know what sort of design I want to go for the apartment, I got Aisha, my interior designer. She'll take care of everything. I'll just give her the receipt, my wallet. I'm like, here you go, take care of it.
And I'll log into my Pinterest and look up some stuff over there. And with that, we are logging off over here and basically giving the board and the desk to Big House to log in and keep you guys entertained from 5 p.m. till 8 p.m. only here on Pulse 95.
if you liked this episode of Afternoon Karak, drop a like and subscribe.
Pulse 95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.